I would like to go over the assignment. This is essentially what the assignment page will look like, and I will give you the HTML file for that. Here we have a HTML table, and we have some new courses offered for the spring semester. The data in the table is stored in a two-dimensional array, and your job will be to loop through that array and to display the data in the table. I will explain how to do this, showing you the code, because I realize that may be difficult for some of you, and I want you to learn how this is done. One reason why I chose this type of assignment is that this is a common thing we do with databases. We dynamically generate data from the database and store it in an HTML table. So by understanding how this is done, you will understand how we do it with a database later on. Another thing that you will be doing in this assignment, there are two buttons here. The only time you can click a button and have something happen in PHP is if that button is a form element and it is input type equals submit. So the only time that we can do anything in PHP is if we're calling the action of the form, which is a PHP file. In this case, the action of the form has to be the same page because we want the effect to happen on this page. So you will be using the PHP_self as the action of this form. You also can program PHP code to execute by setting the href attribute in the A element to a PHP file. When I click on this first button, I am going to sort ascending. When I click on the next button, I will sort descending. And once you do that, you have changed the array and there's no going back to the beginning. Let's take a look at the generated HTML. Here we have the table that you will be outputting the data in, and it needs to look nice. So we see that the content from the array is being placed inside the TD elements. And we have 3 TDs per row. So for every associative array, we will have a row. So the data in the associative array is actually being placed into the TDs inside the row. And when I say data, I mean the values of those keys. We have 3 keys, the ID, the name, and the units. And those keys exist in every one of our associative arrays. So those associative arrays are stored in an outer array, which essentially indicates the number of rows. This part, the opening table tag and the actual headings, are not dynamically generated. I did write them using PHP, but they were not retrieved from the array. So you could do it my way, or you could just hard code it in the HTML document. The same thing for this ending table. That was not looped through in the array. However, all of this code came out of that array, which I will show you. Here is my form, and this is the URL of where my file is. I have 2 input type equals submit buttons. It doesn't matter that there's 2 of them. It's not a problem. They're inside my opening and closing form tag, and they each have a name. When the page loads, this table is displayed. So you need to do that initially. You need to have that code showing the table. However, when we click either button, then we are going to sort the table. So the code that is being used to sort the table from the action of the form needs to be determined inside if it was a post. So let's take a look at the code. Here I'm setting up the array. I'm calling it courses. You can call it whatever you want. And so I have an array. There's my opening array. There's my opening left-hand parenthesis. And further down, Here I am ending that array. And inside that outer array, I have several inner arrays. So here's associative array number 1. Here's my key, ID, name, units. So this is essentially my first array element, comma. Here's my second array element, comma. There's my third array element, comma. And they all have the same keys. They have different values. So we have the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10 of them. This array is stored at the top of the document. We don't need it in the body. If it's not needed in the body, it's best to put it at the top. We'll learn how to store it in an external file later. Here we have the code that will put that table on the page. Here's my echo statement, and this puts the opening table tag on. This is technically hard-coded in PHP. It's not dynamically generated. That's my opening table tag. And notice the escape characters to make it look nice in the source code. Now, this is my first row with my headings for the keys. Here again, I'm just hard-coding them in. And this is generally the procedure. What is generated from the array is the values. So what I have is I have an outer for loop, which loops through my 10 array elements, and an inner for each loop that loops through my associative arrays. So this is the way this is accomplished, because every element in the array, which is 10 of them, is an individual row. So here's my for loop, and here's my count. And so what I need to do is I need to open up a TR. Now the for each is going to put the different values for these 3 keys inside a TD. So there's my opening TD, there's my value, there's my closing TD. So this for each is going to go 3 times, putting the values in the TDs. Now I have to end that TR. So this is the echo. This does not belong inside the for each. The for each is looping through the values. The values go inside the TD. The for loop is looping through the 10 arrays. Every array is going to be placed inside a TR. So we need the opening TR, and now we need the closing TR. So once we're out of the for loop altogether, then we close the table. So our opening table tag in our first row, which is our header row, is outside of the loop. The closing table is outside of the loop. This is a very important procedure, and I'm explaining it to you so you can understand how this is done, because this is how we dynamically pull data out of a database, and we'll be doing that in the future. Now here's my form, and the action is being dynamically generated. I'm using the HTML special chars to make sure that no one types in anything malicious, and I have my 2 submit buttons. So your job will be to put this table on the page. When the user clicks one of these, this is going to be what is referred to as a post back. The form is posting back to itself. Here is where you're going to need the if statement. We only want to be sorting these tables if they have clicked the button, which is going to call the action of the form. How do we determine whether they click button A or button B? We use if is set, because that's going to send a value back. If button A was clicked, we're going to sort them. If button D was clicked, we're going to reverse sort them. As I said, all this data, including the TDs, are coming from the for each loop. In the for loop, we have the opening TR for every row and the closing TR. On top of that for loop, we have the opening table tag and this top row. And here we have our 2 buttons inside a form element.